Hi, I'm Gini. I've been painting for over 40 years and I use the wet into wet or alla prima method, and I want to share with you what I have learned. You can oil paint too, so let's have some fun. Here's a peek at what we're going to paint today.
Today we're going to be painting this lovely wreath with some poinsettia and a red bow and a candle.
Our pattern is ready, so let's get started.
I focused on the top of the canvas. This is an 18 by 24 canvas, so it's rather large, but I think this makes a nice wreath for your wall during the holidays. And we're going to start on the background, and I've mixed a couple of mixes. My first mix, I'm going to take some Prussian blue and alizarin crimson and white, and I'm going to make a kind of a purple, a light purple color. This is going to be the shadow on the wall. So starting up here at the top, I'm just going right around my wreath on the inside, because I want this purple color to be the shadow that the wreath is casting on the wall. So I'm going to put very light shades of this back in here. Little X strokes. I'm going to continue this all the way onto the outside. The light is coming from the right. So on the left side of my wreath, it's going to have a shadow cast. Very loose strokes. I want this to be very pale. I'm going to continue this all the way down underneath of the wreath. And even a little bit out here on the wall. Just to give the idea that there's some shadows being cast by the wreath and by the candle. Maybe pick up a tiny bit more blue down in here. Prussian blue. Just to give our wall a little bit of color, but just kind of let this fade off. And while I'm down here on this side, I'm going to bring a little bit of the glow of the candle down into this area. Just a touch of, this is that cad red, yellow ochre, cad yellow mix. But I want it to be very pale. So I think this is too bright. So I'm going to add a little bit more white and kind of fade this off. The nice thing about starting with a canvas that has liquid clear on it, or has a clear medium on it, this is a safflower oil with a little bit of alkyd medium in the medium. The nice thing about having this on there is that it lets me mix colors right on the canvas. So that when I got this a little too dark, I just added some white. And then I can blend my darker, I'm using a little darker yellow or cad red and yellow ochre mix down here in the corner. And then I'm just going to blend this all up in to there. Very little paint on the outside edges, just a soft glow. A little bit of this up here in the top corner, the yellow. Very pale. And you can make the background any color that you want here. If you want it to match the color of your walls a little bit more, you can do that. Got something on my canvas, so I'll just paint that out. Again, a little bit more of this purple up here. The glow from the candle is also going to be on the inside of the wall behind the candle. So I'm going to start that off with some CAD yellow and white, and then go into the CAD red, CAD yellow, and titanium white mix. So I want this to be a little darker in here, maybe even a touch darker than that. Just kind of blend this out and around. And I can blend that CAD yellow and white mix right up into my shadow colors, just to give the center a nice glow. Now while we're in here working on this area, let's go ahead and put a little bit of that CAD red, CAD yellow mix. I'll start the candle by putting a little bit of that dark right on the edge. Darker CAD red, CAD yellow mix. I'm just going to touch that edge and pull it to the right. Then in the center, I'm going to get a little bit of CAD yellow, CAD red, and titanium white to give my center of my candle kind of a golden color. And then over on the right side, I want that to be lighter. And then I can just kind of blend between the two. Pick up a little bit of burnt sienna for this left side to get that a little darker. Kind of pull the two colors, or the three different shades together. Just to get the roundness of the candle. The center, underneath the flame, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna, add a touch of black to it. I want this just to be a little darker, just around in the center there. I'm going to pick up a smaller brush. I was using a 3/4 inch flat. I'm going to pick up a smaller brush so that I can get some of these details on this candle. A little bit of white right on that back edge. A little lighter right here on the front edge. Blend that down. Back edge a little bit lighter. This is whatever's on my brush and a little bit of titanium white. Just going to bring that around. Brighten that edge there. Using a little bit heavier paint to just kind of pull that edge together. Go back with just a touch of dark burnt sienna over here. Just want to darken that edge. Bring that edge down a little darker. Blend it over just a touch. Just pull it. Right down in here is going to be darker against my foliage. Evergreen stuff right there. A little darker right there. Now the candle itself, I'm going to start with a little bit of burnt sienna. And I'm going to pick up some of that kind of orangish mix. Have that around the edges, or around the edge of that dark area. Wipe my brush. Each time my brush goes down, I'm wiping it off. Then I'm grabbing a little bit of yellow ochre and white, or even cad yellow and white, and just kind of mixing those together. I'm going to add a touch of brighter red right in the center here. And then I'm going to wipe my brush, pick up white, because I want the tip of this to be a little brighter. Could even add a touch of blue on the outside of this right here, and maybe right along the bottom. Prussian blue just on the tip of my brush to kind of give it a little bit of darker right there. And that's my candle. So I'm going to start working on the green foliage. I've got a sap green and black equal amounts, which makes a dark green. So I'm going to take that sap green and black, and I'm going to start working on just the big leaves, the holly leaves. Start working on the holly leaves, and I'm just going to go up here and loosely fill those in with this color. Sap green and black, nice dark green. I'm loosely filling them in because I don't, this doesn't need to be really super dark. I'm going to let some of the canvas show through, and that's going to help give dimension to my leaves. In other words, I'm not using big thick paint here. Just following the pattern, filling these leaves in. See, very loose. A couple of smaller round leaves in the middle of these. Not too worried about covering up any of my berries. We'll get those in there later. I think my pattern was missing a holly leaf or two right in here, so I just added it back. And in between, let's get some round leaves right there. Just use the brush, let the brush work for you, get those in there. Now right behind all these leaves, there's going to be some green of the pine branches. So I'm just going to very lightly, loosely, go ahead and fill in some green back in there. Not worried about the shape of it too much. We'll go back and add those later. Now we've got some poinsettia plants here. I think there's a leaf right there. Go ahead and fill that in. I'm going to fill in a little bit around what I know are going to be my poinsettia flowers. And there's a nice leaf right down. A nice leaf right down here. I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush. I think I want to add a leaf kind of coming out right there. Some green in here. Just putting in a little color behind, in front of that, in front of the candle, but behind the bow. And over on this side, got a leaf right here. Roughly putting in the shape. Just kind of going around the edges of the leaf to get the shape in there, and then just really filling in the center with green. Over here, we've got those pine cones. So these leaves are just kind of around our pine cones. And again, some green right around those pine cones. Go ahead and fill in some green. Right around the pine cones. I'm just going to fill in a little bit of green there. There's one right in here. Let's just put one in there. Fill in some green. I'm not too worried about the shape of these. I'm filling in green. I'm getting a few leaf shapes in there because I know that when I add my highlights and my pine needles, I can adjust all this. Just looking for where I might need to fill in some green around things right now. So as you can see, I kind of have the shape of leaves and a little bit of the shape of those leaves in there, and I filled in with a tiny bit of green behind the leaves where I know my pine needles are going to be. Okay. Now I'm going to take a lighter green. That sap green mix I've mixed with cad yellow and white. And I'm going to get that sap green black. That's that dark green mixture. And I'm going to mix it with some cad yellow and white to get a nice bright green. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to highlight. I'm going to highlight my leaves. The big ones that I put in. I'm just going to go up here and I start with a chisel edge on my brush. Thinking about the light coming from the right. I go right to the edge of my leaf. Right to the edge of the leaf, and I just kind of push down and pull up as I go on towards the center. Push down, pull up. And see, I can add a little bit of a line to the center using that light green. Push down, pull up as I go to the center. Watch this. Push down. As I go to the center, I pull up, pull up. Let's take one leaf and kind of look at it. Let's say there's one right here. I'm going to add one. Okay, I've got the dark those dark edges, dark in the center. Take my light green on the tip of my brush, push down, pull up as I go towards the center. Push down, pull up. And I can add that line in the center. Maybe I'll make this one dark. We just want to make sure that this color is light enough that it shows up. We've got some light coming from the right, we've got some light coming from the candle, right? So I'm going to think about the ones in the center here. Maybe the tips of these get a little brighter because of the light from the candle. Let's do this one up here. So I'm using the highlight to kind of shape these leaves a little bit more. These down here probably won't get as much light. So I just want to make sure that their centers are nice and dark. Dark next to the pine cones. Maybe add a line, a dark line for that center vein. Okay, let's work on our pine cones. We've got 3 pine cones right here. I'm going to start off with some burnt umber. And I'm just going to fill those shapes in with burnt umber. Maybe mix a tiny bit of the burnt sienna in the color. Let's just fill those in. I'm going to do it loosely, roughly. The edges need to be rough. I mean, this is the, like the edge of a pine cone. Burnt umber towards the inside. I'm going to get them a little darker, add a little brown or a little black to my burnt umber to get it nice and dark on the left edge. But it's just giving a little underpainting, a little dark shading. Right in here where these two touch is going to be darker. Maybe this back edge will be a little darker. And then the back edge of this one, right up in here, will be a little darker. Then I'm going to take some black right on the tip of my brush, and I'm just going to give a little bit of texture kind of in the direction that the pine cones would be growing, right? With dark texture. Wipe my brush off, then I'm going to take my smaller filbert and I'm going to grab some yellow ochre and I'm just going to create those edges of those little pine right there, up here. I'm just using the tip of my filbert brush to give those the impression of the edges of those little things that are in the pine cones. Can't for the life of me think of what those are called right now, but you know what I'm talking about. Right in there. And it just has to be the impression. We're not trying to paint these exactly. What we're painting is the effect of light as it hits those edges. So this one, I'm going back and adding some little bit more dark in this one. Going back to my yellow ochre. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow ochre and white and get a little highlight on some of these. I'm not going to highlight every single one, but I know that when the light is hitting some of these on the left side, they're going to have a little bit more light right here. Yellow ochre and white, maybe right in here. And I'm just making kind of like little comma strokes. It's not, I'm not trying to create the whole shape. I'm just highlighting little comma strokes to kind of give you the idea that those little pine cones If I lose my dark, I can always go back and add it. A little bit of burnt sienna over on towards the middle. Little strokes of that. Gives us a little bit more depth. And just that easy. We created our pine cones. Now while I've got this small brush, I'm going to take and I'm going to do those berries. I'm going to take straight alizarin crimson and fill in where I want those little berry shapes to be. There's like 3 berries there. There's 3 little berries there. And I'm just using straight alizarin crimson. There's a little berry right there. There's some right here. And right in there. Now I'm going to take alizarin crimson and black. I want to have a little bit of shadow on the outside edge of these away from the light. Alizarin crimson and black. Just to darken one edge. See, they're already starting to have a little bit of a shape. Takes 3 colors, or 3 values, I'm not going to say colors, 3 values, light, dark light, and mid-tone. So that's what we're doing. We're just giving a little bit of mid-tone to our berries. A little dark shading with that black. The alizarin crimson was the mid-tone. And then I'm going to take a little bit of straight, wipe my brush, take a little bit of straight cad red, and I'm going to put a highlight, a little bit brighter color on the outside right edge of my berries. A little value, a little brighter value. And then I can take a touch, tiny touch of white and a little cad red, and just give them each a little dot of a highlight. Doesn't take much. And there's our berries. Let's move over to our poinsettia. I'm going to go back to my 3/4 inch flat brush, and I'm going to pick up straight Well, I'm going to pick up alizarin crimson with a little bit of black in it. I want this alizarin crimson to be very dark to start these off. So we're just going to fill in poinsettia, the petals of my poinsettia. With alizarin crimson and black. I want the poinsettia leaves to start out with this nice dark color. Keeping it darker in the center. See, like right in there. I'm just shaping the leaves with alizarin crimson and black. I know there's another leaf right in here, smaller. There's some smaller ones in here. I'm going to make sure I just get the shape in there so I know where they are. Using my brush strokes to kind of let that happen. Okay, there's one. You can see I can still see my shape of my leaves because I've kind of let the brush stroke show. Okay, I'll go down here and fill this one in. There's a little inside petal there, leaving the center nice and dark. Maybe there's another little petal right there. Let's just let it show. Okay. There's one back in underneath of here. Go ahead and get that one. Kind of showing. Clean it up, clean up the edges a little bit. I'm letting my brush strokes kind of show me the shape of the petal. Okay, now I filled those all in with alizarin crimson and black. I'm going to wipe my brush out. Then I'm going to go back with straight cad red, and I'm just going to add some highlights to the outside edge. Let me see if I can show you. I put my brush right on the outside edge, and I push down and I pull up and towards the center. Pull up and towards the center. Okay, let me do that again to show you. Down on the outside. These down here I know are not going to have as much light, so I'm just doing the tips. Just doing the tips of these. This one is a little bit more in the light, so set my brush down, push down, pull up and towards the center. Okay, let me show you again. Set my brush down right on the edge. I'm pushing down, and as I go up and towards the center, I release the pressure. Up and towards the center, release the pressure. Okay, right here. Push down, pull up, and release the pressure. Push down, pull up, and release the pressure. Getting more paint on my brush. If the paint doesn't come off, I can grab a little bit of medium, which will help the paint come off of the brush a little bit better. Tiny bit of medium into my cad red. Kind of have to judge and see if if your paint is coming off the brush enough, or whether you need a little bit of medium to help it. But I really am just pushing down, and as I come towards the center, I'm pulling up, releasing the pressure. I've got some here in the center, right there, little smaller leaves. Get some highlight on those. Down here and get some of these. There's a leaf. And once I get that color on, that's the kind of the mid-tone. I'm going to go back over here to my cad red and cad yellow mix. I'm going to go think about where the light really might be sparking on some of these, and I'm going to add just a touch of this color. That's the cad red and cad yellow mix, and just add a little extra oomph to the tips of some of these petals. This is less. I'm not going to pick up or do as much, go in as far, just catching the tips. again, I'm putting the brush down and just pulling it towards the center and lifting at the same time so that I don't get too much paint on this last step. Now there are some berries in the center of my flowers. I'm going to go in with straight, I've already got it dark in there, so I'm going to start off with some cad red and just put in some berries. If I need to darken my edges, once I get my berries in there, I can see if I need to do that, which I may need to. Okay, go in with some black. Give my a little bit of highlight towards the bottom, shadow towards the bottom of some of these, because I want them to sit down in that flower. And I'm going to take a little bit of the cad red and yellow ochre mix and give myself a little highlight on the tops of some of these. Maybe a little brighter highlight. And then a touch of cad red and white. A little tiny touch of that to kind of give me a spark of highlight. And there's my berries. Now the last thing we're going to do is our bow. Okay, we're going to start our bow out just kind of the same way we did our flowers, by alizarin crimson. I'm going to fill in alizarin crimson and black. I know that towards the center of my bow, this is going to be darker. I'm just going to kind of paint in the direction that the bow kind of flows, starting in the center where I know there's going to be wrinkles, just kind of pulling that out, and then filling in the outside with more straight alizarin crimson. I know the center, or the inside of the bow right here, is going to be darker. The inside of the bow is going to be darker, so I'm just going to add more black to my alizarin crimson. Get that nice and dark in there. Again, starting here, getting the direction of those creases started. And just filling in with alizarin crimson. Center here, alizarin crimson, and black, more black around the outside edge, because that's too much, because we know it's going to be dark in the center in there. And then we'll pull this down. It's going to have a dark side, and then the a dark edge there, and then the outside is going to be a little brighter. Alizarin crimson. Okay, now we're going to take some CAD red. Let's do a little highlighting. We know that the outside edge here is probably going to have a little bit brighter. And I'm just taking it and putting my brush down and pulling it back into the center. I'm not going to go into my center and cover up all my dark, but I am going to add a little bit of brightness right to the outside edge, right up here. I want this to be a little bright. And then right in here in the center, let's just give a little spark to the center. Right there. We don't want to go all the way to the edge, because we want that knot to be darker in there. Right along this edge might have a little brightness. Right here. Then we know that right along this edge will be brighter. Some nice brighter red. That might be brighter. This is kind of turned, so this will be brighter, but we'll leave the underside of that dark. Go back and clean my edge up here a little bit. Now we know that the candle is going to cast a little bit of glow right up here on the top edge of this bow right here. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of that there. Maybe over here as well. Right there. Maybe it comes down a little bit into the bow. Gives a little sheen. Think about where the light might catch. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add all the little pine needles. And to do that, I'm going to take my 3/4 inch flat and I'm just going to flatten it between my paper towels, clean it out, and then I'm going to pick up, let's start with the dark green. I want you to see that. Can you see the tip of that brush? It really is got a chiseled edge on it, so that when I take it up here to my canvas, I can just use the chisel edge of that brush, and I can just take and kind of tickle in, no pressure, little pine needles. And there's some over here coming out. There's going to be some showing up in here in the candle area. But see, I have some green back there, and this darker green is just kind of going to show up. Maybe there's one coming out here. And we'll go back and highlight these, so this is not the final pine needle. Maybe there's one sticking right in there. Right over here. Keep your brush chisel edge as you can. And I'm just giving the first shape of these. I will go back and highlight these. You can also kind of use this to kind of shape your wreath a little bit. If it's not looking too round, you can add or subtract. Okay. Now once I get the basics on there, I'm going to go back with some lighter green, and I'm going to add in some highlights. Now this is a kind of a mid-tone green. I'm not getting the brightest highlights yet. Again, using this to kind of shape the wreath. Keep your chisel edge. To do that, you just kind of pull your brush on one side, pull, 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 turn it over, pull, pull, pull. That keeps my edge nice and sharp. Notice that I'm crisscrossing these. I'm not going in one direction with these. Pine needles have a lot of needles, and they all crisscross. Gives it more depth. Makes it look more real. All right, and then once I get those on, I'm going to go CAD red or CAD yellow, and get that, pick up that light green, CAD yellow, white, and that light green, even a little bit of straight sap green with CAD yellow and white. We want this to be a highlight and so that it shows up. And then I'll go back in here. This final highlight gives you a chance to really kind of show the direction that your wreath is growing. Really spark up. I think I need more in here. Go back with my dark first. This is a real nice fill-up. These pine needles. Okay, last thing I look at is I go back and I look at, are my darks dark enough? Do I have my darks underneath my shadows dark enough? Pick up some purple. I'll darken this a little bit more, maybe there, maybe down on the bottom. Blend these colors together a little bit back here. Maybe it needs to be a little brighter here and there. That's usually the last thing I do is I just look at my painting and see, do I have the lights light enough and the darks dark enough. Maybe the glow around my candle needs a little brightener. Maybe the highlight on the side of my candle right there, maybe that needs a little spark. Brightening right there.
I think at this point we can sign it and call it done.